Hi everyone, good afternoon. So what we're going to cover today, I think one of the hardest things that digital marketers find at the moment is trying to understand where to start with digital media in an AI context, and just starting to help you focus a little bit more on where to begin. And what really you should focus on around the big three, so Google, Facebook and Amazon. Just going to go into a little bit of detail about what they're up to at the moment. And then beyond that, it's about trying to understand that the future of search is ultimately automated, and about how we engage with that. So what your job is and what your job's likely to be in the future. And then we're going to finish just with some opportunities that you can pick up straight away tomorrow. So I've tried to make the end of the presentation, the last 10 minutes, around key things that you can really take away. Not agency toolkits, more specific around sort of Google Ads and Search Ads 360, so things you can really sort of kick off with. So where to begin? I think one of the things that I've certainly found the hardest is that artificial intelligence is ultimately quite a large rabbit hole, and it can be really, really abstract, or you can be really specific. And if you really start to get into it, you come across all sorts of stuff like this, and you can really start to get a little bit caught out in how you're focusing. And this is a great example. This is a PhD student at Sydney University, and he used machine learning to cross over a book of dinosaurs and a book of flowers. I mean, it took him so much time. He got 33,000 likes, though, so it's probably worth it. But it was ultimately just procrastination, and he said that. And he was just like, oh, I've just wasted a huge amount of time. It looks beautiful, though, and it's fantastic, but it is a rabbit hole. This is another great example. Ara, so this was a bird that somebody created using artificial intelligence to tweet at him. That was it. She is literally entirely useless, but he really likes her, and again, spent an extremely long time doing it. And I think maybe not to this extent, but what we can do as digital marketers is procrastinate quite a lot, and potentially get a little bit lost. And I think it's really important that we sort of understand where to focus. And I think a great place for everyone to start is just focusing on the big three. Ultimately, these businesses are technology companies. Each have a vertical of specialism. But all of these businesses are engaging throughout all of their platforms with artificial intelligence, and they're making things available to us as advertisers that we can start to use as well. And really starting to get to grips with what they're talking about is particularly helpful. So Amazon have Amazon Web Services, AWS, and they have artificial intelligence built into their cloud base. And what it essentially allows us to do is to engage with that if we want to, but it's also helpful to understand that they're using it in their online environments as well. And this is an interesting thing. I actually talked about this last year as well, just 2 slides. But if you look on Amazon, they use dynamic pricing, and you don't necessarily always understand to what extent they're using machine learning for dynamic pricing. So this is me just looking at an outdoor backpack. It's £54, and you look on the face of it and you think that's absolutely fine. There's a website called Camel, particularly catchy, that lists the price history of how Amazon have changed the price over time. And you can see just from October up until the end of May how much the price has changed on this product. They're using machine learning all the time to just constantly adjust the price of the product to make it appealing to the market. So this sort of technology is in use all of the time on their platforms, but they're starting to make this kind of intelligence available to us as advertisers as well. So what's their focus? So where are Amazon trying to get to? And what's of most interest to us? So I thought it would be useful just to put up just some examples of their products, just to help us understand kind of what's available to us as digital marketers. And something that I found particularly interesting is that Amazon now do Amazon Photos. So if you're a Prime member, a bit like Google Photos, you can upload for free, as long as you're a Prime member, all of your photographs. I have 30,000 photographs uploaded onto the Google version of this. And you have to start, as an advertiser, start thinking about why are these businesses offering this kind of free storage. And it's one, is to keep you on their platforms, but secondly, they're using machine learning across all of their services, and think about the sort of information that they can gather on you as individuals by uploading such a vast quantity of data. And they can understand what's in the photographs, the geotagging in the photographs. And collecting this data set, so think about music on Prime, think about streaming on Prime, Alexa, and the list kind of goes on, so there's Amazon Pantry, Audible, and I mean, even beyond that, so into health with PillPack, MasterCard even. So the amount of information, home security with Ring, the amount of information that these guys are able to collect on us as individuals is giving them potentially a huge competitive advantage in the advertising space. And I haven't gone into Google and Facebook, but ultimately they're doing a similar thing, right? So they're collecting this kind of information constantly using different sorts of products. And the big three have different data sets. So a great example of that would be Google have Google Maps. So they can do things like store visits and start to track you into individual locations. Amazon don't have the ability to do that. So we spent a little bit of time with Amazon recently just updating some of their products. And they don't have that sort of tracking capability. So there are nuances between them, but ultimately they're still trying to aggressively collect as much data as they possibly can. And the reason why they do that, so this depth of data, it fuels interest and intent. And those are two key things as advertisers that we're interested in the future. And the reason for that is it allows us to personalize, okay? So the more information we have and the more they automate and the more they target on a one-to-one basis, they're going to increase their ad revenue and we're going to increase our spend with them and our conversions with them, hopefully at a better CPA, because we're able to personalize our messaging. So I think one of the key things to understand is that our future of search specifically and digital, it is automated. And there's a survey done by Forrester, and 79% of respondents think that AI will move us towards more strategic work. And I think that's brilliant for us because we're going to spend less time on some of the more smaller tasks. It's very time-consuming, both client-side and in agency land. But interestingly, what it means is it's kind of there on a plate for us. So now, if you start to engage with, like, particularly around Google, they had their Google Marketing Next conference just recently, and they released one-pagers to agencies and to big clients with all of their products. And it was quite interesting because I was going through all of them, and I've just put some snippets from them up on the screen here, and I've just highlighted in pink kind of the key things that stood out to me. So audience expansion automatically finds users, maximize conversion value automatically sets bids, customize ads automatically builds them, smart shopping campaigns, automated optimization. And this kind of stuff, we know it's great, but also I think we need to be a little bit careful as digital marketers about how we're engaging with this. And I think, interestingly, a comparison is probably a little bit unfair to put Criteo up here, but anyone that's been around in the industry for quite a long time will know that there was quite a large debate kind of 5 or 10 years ago around Criteo, and there still is, about their transparency and how they're running their bidding algorithms. And actually, what's different now? So Google are automatically setting bids, automatically customizing ads. And Criteo have been doing this kind of stuff for a while, and you could even think maybe they were a little bit ahead of the curve in terms of the technology that they're using. But are we, if we're not careful, heading towards potentially the worst kind of black box? And I think what we can do is protect ourselves against that. And I think it's really important that we don't just pick up one pages from Google or whoever it might be and start to just run these kind of things without understanding them. So there's 3 things that I think we need to try and do more of. It's about interpreting how the big 3 are using their artificial intelligence. It's about testing new releases. And I suppose the key thing here about what's really adding value and understanding that what the impact these tests are having. And I think often we can be busy fools in that we're testing and testing and testing, and actually we might not spend enough time on different products to really understand what they're delivering for us. And one of the ways that we can control this in our agency landscape is to create our own filter. So anyone that engages with agencies will know that we have kind of auditing processes, and that's how we understand kind of what's the right way to structure PPC accounts or social accounts. And the reason why we're able to create these auditing processes is because we have a filter and an understanding of what we think is important. And I'd encourage anyone that's kind of working in this field to go away and think about what your filter is, and how you're going to judge and understand what the most relevant test is for you. Ours is focused around 3 things. So fundamentally, does it make us better? at what we do? Does it make us more intelligent? And does it make us faster? And every single opportunity in our audit gets scored, so that we can really start to understand like the priorities and the outcome of tests as well. And I suppose beyond that, it's about understanding how we can start to jump into opportunities ourselves. So it's a little bit of an overview about how we approach it. What I said I was going to do now is just run you through a few things that you guys can sort of take notes of and go away and start to engage with on a day-to-day basis. And the things that I've listed here are kind of top things that we would expect to be on a majority of PPC accounts. But hopefully you guys will not necessarily be running all of them, and you might take away some tips that you can engage with them on. So the first one is automated bidding. So this is about programmed rules, I suppose, and scripts. So a great place to start is positional-based bidding. Approach with, this is the basic of the basic. So you need to approach this with quite a high level of caution. When we operate our accounts, we prefer to operate through SearchLeeds 360, just because of the flexibility and the data that it gives us. But a lot of these are available just in standard ads as well. What we would recommend on the positional-based bidding is try and use rules in a combination. So don't just set one rule on a specific campaign. And try and focus on high impression share campaigns. So campaigns that you know are delivering for you and that you want to appear in quite high positions for. But you need to protect yourself as well. So because everyone's engaging with artificial intelligence and bidding, Google's got quite a lot of freedom to push up bids. So you can set minimum and maximum rules just for your own protection. It starts to get a little bit more interesting when you start to look at target CPA and ROAS. I think one of the key things here is that people often just set a CPA, whatever an acceptable cost per order is, or whatever your metric might be. And we try and think a little bit deeper than that, so really understanding the commercial objectives and the data that you have available to you. So one of our clients, View Cinemas, you can imagine the kind of complexity that exists within that business, so location, price point, film type. All those three things combined create quite a complex situation because margin will be different in different situations, locations, pricing. And we set a whole load of different combination of rules that are focused around CPA at different points. We managed to reduce CPA on brand from £5 down to 26p, and on generic CPA from £12 down to £3. An amazing impact of just using these rules. So when I talk about key things to go away and think about, if you're running rules, then great, but start to think about how you can take in more of your own commercial data to start to influence your rules. And this didn't just impact volume either. So bookings were up 150%, 150% year on year. And thirdly, just around rules, it's impression share targeting. So it's worth trying, this is a new feature that's just come out. So it's used in conjunction with positional-based bidding if you want to. And it's about trying to understand kind of segmented campaigns, so try and group your campaigns together, particularly high ROAS campaigns. Instead of doing positional bidding, you can do your impression share, in case you don't want to be there the whole time. So that's a good place to start. And I think once you get to grips with rules, a nice place to go on to is coding and scripts. A lot of people kind of get a little bit concerned at this point. But there are scripts that are available out there. Agencies release scripts. We write some of our own. So it's just about kind of having a little bit of a look around for yourself. And if you've got a basic level of coding or know someone that does, then you can start to have a little bit of a play around. I think one of the most interesting things to start with around scripts is heat mapping. It's really flexible and really allows you to understand what's happening on your accounts. Top tips here would be not to focus just on click-through rate, which is often a common one, or just on orders, but start to try and consider margin on products, number of conversions, conversion rate, and mix those data sets together in your heat mapping. And don't just heat map a whole account, heat map segments of the account. So you might have brand, you might have generic, or you might have locations, and then start to create clear data patterns off of it. One of the things that I think we need to be quite careful with sometimes is categorizing data patterns and drawing conclusions that aren't necessarily clear. And one of the best ways to do that is smoothing out data. So once you've got your heat map in place, if you start to see anomalies that are just throwing your data out, then make sure you smooth it out. And there's ways to do that in Google Sheets that are quite straightforward. And once you've done that, use Google Sheets. And the reason why I say that over Excel is because it's a lot easier to link it. So you can build your heat map, and then in the same table, you can build it into AdWords or into Search Ads 360 through the script. So if your heat map changes, then your script can constantly go to the sheet. So it's a really easy way to integrate. And secondly, the power of n-gram. So ultimately, this is like a common phrase tool. And we often use this to help us control exact match. So exact match, for those that know, is just getting a little bit broader all the time. And using n-grams and common phrases to continue to build up your exact match is really powerful. Again, this is probably a script that anyone could find tomorrow. And it's a great way if your client side to try and keep agencies on their toes, and it's a great way for agencies just to try and make sure they're building out their keyword sets. And don't just use it for positives, use it to control your negatives as well. And also, something that's used a lot less for is creative performance. So start to pull your big creative reports and use n-grams to start to understand common phrases in your better performing creative sets. And that will help you build out more creative and understand which points in your creative are generating conversions and click-through rate. So beyond that, we start to look at matching product and price to customer need. So this is one of the key ways that we can start to integrate a little bit better on a micro moments kind of level and start to really reach the customer on a more personalized basis. Dynamic search ads are used quite commonly. I think this would probably be quite a good example of, we should be cynical with these kind of tools. Dynamic search ads, it just automatically picks kind of phrases that it wants to use. And I think there's better ways for us to influence the algorithm for gains and ad customization in Search Ads 360, and ads is a great way to do that. And what you essentially do is you build your spreadsheets, and you can list these kind of links. And focusing around device, location, pricing and promotions, we were able to, on one particular client, increase click-through rate by about 30%, and that was on a location-based client. So we were able to build our ad customization template, and then write the script, and link the script up, and it was enabling us to really boost up click-through rate. I think there's an argument to, at this point, think about going beyond search as well. So this is the only point that I really touch on display. But in Search Ads in Display Video 360, it's possible for you to build your creative out in there. And that's based on a decision tree. So in the same way that you're thinking about your ad customization on search, you can do the same sort of thing in Display and Video 360. And spending time on the decision tree and what your decisions are based on the data is really important, because that's going to be essentially the foundation of your creative story. And then testing the data rules that you have as well. So don't just stop your decision tree there. Start to test it and refine it as you go. And then getting into micro moments. So micro moments have been around for a long time. And I actually really like it. It's something that's talked about a lot. And it's something that Google have been pushing for quite a while now, probably 2 or 3 years. But ultimately, what they're talking about is just reaching people in the moment that matters to them. And it's still in its infancy, really. So if you think about personalization and everything I talked about earlier, there's a great opportunity with micro moments over time to make this a lot better. There's ways that we can engage with it now. There's 2 ways to do it. The first way is through first-party data in CRM. As an agency, we use a tool called Data Robot, which we've customized to our own requirements, but you can get an off-the-shelf version as well. And then what you can start to do is predictive model your own data, particularly retailers and those with a good CRM base will be doing this a lot. But using it specifically for search, starting to build your lists out, start to think about what the most next likely action is for an individual. And once you build those audience lists out using predictive modeling, then you can push them into the search platform as well. If that's a little bit too advanced for you at this stage, something else that they've released recently is life events. So this is the first time that they've really tried to surface this kind of micro moment stuff as a targeting option for us. So you can start, there's a screenshot down here, but you can see all the things that they do. So recently married, recent house move, home renovation. And I think all these different options allow us to just be a lot more specific in who we're trying to reach from a search point of view. We've rolled this out on one of our accounts and managed to reduce CPA by about 14%, and it was quite a mature account as well. But the key to this is not just switching on and just testing random life events. It's about really getting to grips with your demographics, essentially. So any kind of profiling that you can do on your side as a client or on an agency for a client is going to really help you just sort of test these life events. And then dynamic bidding. So this is something that should be considered against product and margin and so on. And I think here it comes back to business intelligence again. So dynamic bidding is something that you can just switch on, but it's something that we need to spend a lot of time on. So low margin products you need to be careful with. Have you got poor stock? Local inventory ads are a brilliant way of pulling stock locally into search, and we found that mixing that with location extensions for local listing ads was really powerful as well. And it's about, I suppose, potentially optimizing your footfall. I talked about Google Maps and the data they're collecting on individuals and where they go. Understanding footfall off of search clicks and trying to create a blended CPA has been something that's quite successful for us as well. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an idea of things that you could go away with. Hopefully you don't feel like this guy, but if you do, tough luck. So in summary, focus on the big three, Google, Amazon, Facebook. Be cynical. Create your own strategy, so interpreting, testing, understanding, and create your filter. Create your audit. And start small and just build incrementally with different opportunities. And I think you'll be in a great place. So thank you very much.